Hello again, horse racing fans. Welcome to another episode of the Inside Post. Spring horse racing stakes action is kicked off. We just finished up with the fabulous Kentucky Derby, won by big long shot Mystic Dan, beating out Sierra Leone and the Japanese horse Forever Young. So now our eyes and horse racing focus shifts to, you guessed it, the Preakness. So we're here to take an early look at the Preakness Stakes currently um, for May 18th, the Saturday, to be ran at Pimlico in Maryland. Right now we have about 10 horses that have kind of thrown their hats, possibly in the ring to run against, obviously, Muth, who is the Bob Baffert trained horse who has been waiting and sitting here, it seems like, since he came off of that Arkansas Derby victory. So we're going to run through the probables right now. I'm kind of give you an inside look at each horse of what to expect and which ones we see could possibly uh, stay entered and move into the starting gate for the Preakness Stakes on May 18th. So obviously everybody's talking about the Muth horse. If you're disappointed or whatever, if the horse should have been in the Kentucky Derby, rules are rules. Follow the rules, and the horse would obviously comply. Baffert obviously didn't follow those rules, and that's why the horse is pointed towards the Preakness. So here he is, kind of on a, I guess, redemption tour, whatever you would call it. Kind of does the same thing every year since his ban from the Kentucky Derby. So likely heavy favorite. I believe it was like 7-2 in one of the latest Preakness pools, or like the finest Preakness pool for betting. So pretty good odds there if you kind of were one of the early bettors on Muth. Again, 7-2. Mystic Dan was not far behind, about 15-1. Crazily pre-Derby. So obviously some people knew knew something in there about Mystic Dan's chances to win the Kentucky Derby. So 2 for 2 in this last two races, the San Vicente and the Arkansas Derby, did beat out Just Steel and Mystic Dan in the Arkansas Derby. Both horses he could face yet again in here. Just Steel and Mystic Dan both are probables to enter the Preakness, so we'll see what the connections want to do on that end. The horse ran second to Fierceness in the Breeders' Cup Juvenile, and then the winner of the American Pharoah. So a really good horse who has done a lot of racing, obviously on the West Coast, did come to the Arkansas Derby, stole some points in there, and then ownership tried to vie for the reasoning of why this horse should be in the Kentucky Derby. That was quickly shut down by Churchill Incorporated, and now the horse is probably going to be the buzz of the Preakness, and it's probably going to be able to walk and win the race at the Preakness, just because a lot of these horses, yes, they are entered, but also could be pulled out leading up to that race. It seems like not of a whole lot of Derby contenders right now. Mystic Dan, Just Steel, Mugatu are the current ones we're looking at from the Kentucky Derby. Mugatu did not run, wasn't also eligible. So obviously Muth will be the heavy contender, heavy favorite. Good reasoning, connections, speed, all of that comes off a pretty good layoff and rest compared to some of these other horses. Next on the Baffert list is Imagination. Usually we get burned. A lot of bettors get burned on this, but not betting the other Baffert. Usually we stick to the heavy bet Baffert. Imagination is a pretty good horse. Ran second to Stronghold in the Santa Anita Derby. Basically a second place finish from being into the Kentucky Derby. Winner of the San Felipe. And then kind of picked up some pieces in some maidens and allowance races. Has not finished off the board in its 6 starts, I do believe. So one that has raced at a mile or longer in its last 5-6 races. Has a grade stakes race, 2 grade stakes races under its belt already. So again, you're looking at the other Baffert. This one's a pretty good one out of Into Mischief. Speed figures have been improving. Each time the horse is raced. The mare Magical Feeling is by Empire Maker, so should be able to pick up the distance at the Preakness with the tight turns, and probably be second, maybe a third betting option in here for bettors. So one to take a look at as we kind of get closer. One we will watch to see, how the horse is kind of progressing or moving through, leading up to the Preakness. But it's going to be a stablemate with Muth, so it's going to go along with the workouts, possibly with the top contender for the Preakness. Next up, we have Informed Patriot. This is a Steve Asmussen trained horse, not getting a whole lot of buzz except for the winner of the Bathhouse Stakes. Last time out, this is a son out of Hard Spun by a Yaki Way mare by Grand Slam. Like I said, winner out of the Bathhouse. That was at Oaklawn going a mile and 8. The horse has been going over a mile in its last 4 starts. Did run in the Sunland Park and the Arkansas Derby. Finished 5th in the Arkansas, 5th in the Sunland, and then really kind of picked up the pieces in the Bathhouse, winning pretty steadily or pretty easily. Has ran against some the Derby contenders, Catching Freedom, Just Steel, again Muth, Just Steel, and Mystic Dan, and then kind of got a little bit of class relief in that Bathhouse. Will come in here probably at a big price, but could be a pretty good one to hit the board as well. Had a load of thirds before really getting onto the Kentucky Derby Trail and kind of faltered. Of course, going in or coming out of the Smarty Jones, going into that Sunland Park and then Arkansas Derby, just could never find one of the pedestal positions of first, second, or third to pick up some Derby points. So kind of skipped out on the Derby Trail. Again, Asmussen trained, we'll see what this one does. This one could possibly be one that would pull out of here for the connections, just because it's kind of hit or miss. It kind of has 2 wins over its lifetime, so definitely going to be up against it in here. Speed figures are a little lower compared to Muth, Just Steel, or Muth and Imagination, and definitely Mystic Dan now. So interesting enough to see. This one, like I said, could be one that will skip or pull out. And of course, as of now, we have the Grade 1 Kentucky Derby winner in Mystic Dan, has been talked about of being entered in here. Got a 100 or 101 speed figure out of that Kentucky Derby, so really good. If you go back and watch the video that we've all seen, Brian Hernandez does a fabulous job of sticking to the rail and kind of just cutting it super close. So I think the horse bumped off the rail a couple times and was able to shoot free and able to kind of put enough distance between himself and Sierra Leone and Forever Young, who was making a pretty big run on the outside. The horse did finish 3rd in the Arkansas Derby behind Muth and Just Steel, who is also in here, a D. Wayne Lukas trained horse. Winner of the Southwest, and then 5th in the Smarty Jones. So the big win was in that Southwest, was over a muddy track. So take note again, if we kind of have an off track, Mystic Dan is kind of a quiet mutter. I think that's probably why the horse took a lot of money on Derby Day from 30 to 1 to like 18 to 1. A lot of people saw that, he's had a pretty good going over a muddy or wet track. Definitely going to have to get himself into, I guess, a quick turnaround shape. Coming off a 2 weeks rest is always tough for horses, especially going this distance, especially at the Preakness with the tight turns. And kind of what are the odds of having that same trip that he got in the Kentucky Derby? We know Muth is probably going to go to the lead. Imagination will sit right off. Is Mystic Dan going to be able to sit close enough to have that rail saving or rail riding trip that he got? Going to be interesting to see as horse fans. Yes, we want to see a big field, but in talks, best for horses, best for horsemanship, or even wagering, do we need to push the Preakness back a little bit in the May time? Next up, kind of our last one that we're kind of taking a dive into is Seize the Grey, an Arrogate colt, trained by D. Wayne Lukas. This is the big winner out of the Pat Day Mile on the Derby undercard. Kind of as soon as that horse won, a lot of people started talking, okay, let's point you to the Preakness. But again, another one that's going to be off a quick turnaround here. Again, is it good for the horses? Hit or miss. More than likely, no. But it has some pretty good connections. You got Arrogate, Smart Shopping, mare out of Smart Strike. So has some pretty good pedigree for this type of race. Going to have to go a little bit longer into the Preakness. Does come out of the Bluegrass and the Jeff Ruby Stakes, finishing 3rd and 7th in there. So maybe the distance is the big question mark for Seize the Grey. But if the coach says he's ready to go, the coach knows best. Let's listen to Dwayne Lukas. He's putting 2 in here right now, Just Steal and Seize the Grey. Seize the Grey looks to be the better horse. Speed figure, I think in that Pat Mile was about a 90, low 90s probably. So another one that's probably going to come from off the pace a little bit. So if he has a good fraction to run into by Muth or Imagination, could be a really good horse at a pretty good price as a third pick in here. So we're kind of hoping we kind of stick with the field that is set right now. We're hoping that we get 10 horses. Obviously, we would like to see 12, 13 horses because there's always going to be those leading up scratches or horses that are going to pull and go elsewhere. Just horses need rest, and that's kind of what the connections will do, is just pull them out. So we kind of just give you a quick rundown. And of course, there's some other horses, Copper Tax, Uncle Heavy, Mugatu, and Just Steal that we really didn't dive into a whole lot, but make sure to check out our other videos that we will be going into the Preakness Stakes. Once we kind of have a better understanding of what horses are definitely guaranteed, once we see some odds, post positions, and then workouts leading up to it, we will have our long shot play and, of course, our big Preakness card videos. We thank you for watching and supporting us on Derby weekend and leading up through the summer as we kick off some of these big graded stakes races. So make sure to subscribe if you're watching us on YouTube. Give us a like or a follow if you are watching or listening on our podcast. We thank you for watching. Hope you win big.